It was a cold, quiet night, and Sarah found herself lost in the forest. The moon was barely visible behind the clouds, and the eerie silence made her skin crawl. She walked briskly, her flashlight shaking in her hand. Every step felt like an eternity as the sounds of the night seemed to close in around her. Suddenly she heard it, a whisper, soft but distinct. "Come closer." It came from the shadows. She froze, her heart racing. Her breath caught in her throat. There was no one else in the forest, yet this figure stood before her, hidden in the darkness. "Who's there?" she whispered, but the forest remained still. She turned to run, but her feet felt heavy. The whisper echoed louder now. "Stay, just a little longer." She stumbled, her legs failing her. The figure stepped forward, his eyes glowing an unnatural red. Sarah tried to scream, but no sound came out. It was like the forest had swallowed her voice. She fell hard onto the ground, her body paralyzed by fear. The figure's form began to warp and twist, as though it wasn't entirely human. The darkness deepened, as if the forest itself had come alive. The trees stretched toward her, their limbs like claws, ready to claim her. She could feel his cold breath on her face, and in that moment the whispers turned into laughter. "You should never have come here," he said, his voice a low growl. Everything went black. She couldn't see, couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Only the sound of her own heartbeat echoed in the void. When Sarah awoke, she was no longer in the forest. She was in a dark, abandoned cabin. The air was cold and the windows were sealed shut, but she could still feel the presence of the figure somewhere nearby. The door creaked and a shadow passed by the crack. She wasn't alone. The figure was still out there, waiting. Her breath caught as she heard a slow, deliberate knock on the door. The figure was coming inside. The door creaked open and she saw his face. It was no longer human, but something monstrous, twisted by darkness. In a panic, Sarah screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the darkness. The figure stepped closer, and she knew with horrifying certainty that she wasn't going to escape.